Alan, you want to comment here?
Amos speaks about, I think it's about in the 8:8 area, of great waters being brought up over Tyre, I believe it is, and they'll never be seen again. Isaiah 24 and many other areas, such as Sixth Seal, point to such devastation and the earth being brought off its foundations, which again the Kolbrin Bible does speak about, that there is going to be great tsunamis. Also, it's prophecies regarding Bob out in the end days, as well as in Luke 21, so that the waves will be roaring, and in Jeremiah 50 or 51, that the waters will be brought up over Babylon. So tsunamis will play a part in our future as well. And why I'm interested in this book is, in this concept, is because you look at Exodus and there's a massive amount of prophetic revelation that people skip over here. You just plug in the two witnesses, the second Exodus prophecies mentioned throughout the prophets, and the parallels between Exodus and the book of Revelation with things like locusts, bloodied water, darkness, boils, frogs being demonic beings in Revelation, hail. All these things are mentioned in the Kolbrin Bible in just a few short, quick chapters. And I can't really find in the chapters that I read about the return of the Red Dragon / Niburu, its possibilities, that is anti-biblical or anti-Day of the Lord. And so the cohesive factor here, what really makes this of a high interest, is that the prophecies Zechariah Sitchin brings forth, which again is from fallen angels, but there's a lot of truth to what he's saying. It's just that spin that's Antichrist, that's the devastator, is that the book of Exodus was approximately 3,600 years ago. So this also ties into this big jigsaw puzzle, and we've had books like First Enoch, Maccabees, Esdras taken away for us. So to think that there's not some things that to be searched otherwise, I think that's a little bit naive. And again, it's a glory of God to conceal a matter, but it's the glory of a king, a spiritual king, to seek it out. So all this seems to be fitting into a great jigsaw puzzle. And again, all these books, such as First Enoch, surfacing in this day and age, as well as the availability of the internet and many other sacred texts, which can lead you astray if you give them too much credence, seems to be pointing to a picture that is being painted.
Yeah, it's interesting to me is that in having studied, the whole wealth of Scripture and holy words and holy works and what is considered, holy books by different people, is that there's so many different things that are mentioned. There's wormwood in Revelation. There's Planet X. There's Niburu. There's the Sumerian. There's the destroyer of the Kolbrin Bible. And I'm not saying that they're connected, but it seems interesting to me that they keep repeating the same phenomena. And so, whether we give any credence to whether these events are going to happen in the future or not, or a planet Niburu coming back towards the earth or not, it seems to me, even in Revelation, there's written about, destruction on the earth and asteroids hitting. Even in the Bible code, there's a lot mentioned about asteroids impacting the earth and destroying, the ships of the sea and polluting and poisoning the waters and the rivers. And in reading and bringing forth what the Kolbrin Bible says and making it available to the listening audience, because most of you have never heard of it or even had chance to read of it. It's quite poetic. It's very eloquent in its presentation in the way that it describes the events that happened in the past, which we have no other really detailed accounting of. Even though we know the Bible talks about the three world ages, and I talk about this in my book for those that don't know about it. Basically, the first world age is the spiritual age, when everybody was in spiritual being in angelic form before we incarnated into flesh. And it was in that we were witness to the war in heaven, the rebellion of Lucifer, and the banishment of 1/3 of the angels. And then the angels were part of those that incarnated into the flesh, and that especially those that were of the middle ground that made no decision one way or the other, were part of those that incarnated into the flesh in what would be the second world age. And the second world age happened and began when Lucifer seduced Eve in the garden and impregnated her with Cain, who became the firstborn son of the devil, the firstborn son of Satan, and Adam impregnated with Abel, whom Cain slew, whom Cain murdered, and then Seth was the second son, and he was the line from which all the patriarchs were born. And those were the two lines that the whole Genesis 3:15 enmity between her seed and thy seed, that war was going to perpetuate. And that began the second world age, which would go on for 7,000 years, according to Scripture, that there would be, much like 7 days of creation, 7,000 years, these 7 days, which would make up the second world age. And then there would be a third world age where all this duality and evil and that we see now would be eliminated. There would no longer be any of that, and it would no longer be perpetuated. The Lord would no longer allow it. And evil and judgment would come into being, and salvation would be granted to those of the righteous and those that were of the wicked, the wheat and the tares. We're talking about the harvest here. And the Lord put in His Word all these different signs. And so I'm just bringing forth all these different scriptures so that people can, just hear them and judge for yourself. Go read them for yourself and decide for yourself whether they're relevant or not. I'm making no claim one way or the other. But I'm going to go ahead and take this call on area code 804 just to see if they want to make a comment. Area code 804, did you have a question or comment?
Yes, I have lived through a lot of bizarre circumstances, and a lot of religions create a lot of problems. And I think what people have to do is really look within and try and, whatever they've done in their past, become more spiritual and loving with one another, and look into whatever spiritual religions they want, but with caution. And again, I have found that my strength comes from just asking Jesus to come into my heart and help me fulfill my mission in this life according to His will. As far as what's prophesied, we're all going to die a physical death. And that, again, should be an awakening for everyone, everywhere, to see that we're here for a very short period, and what are we doing with our time to make the world a better place, to make peace with our brothers and try and achieve a spiritual life in the physical plane, so that when we go into the spiritual plane again, we will have accomplished some of the lessons we came here to learn.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, brother. I think that is what all this is about, is in developing a relationship with the Father and the Son, and that's true religion. It's a personal relationship. It's not about a building. It's not about a book. It's not one day a week. It's an every moment, every second kind of thing. And so I applaud you in your walk, brother, and I hope that you can, continue to grow. All of us continue to grow in the Word and in the Lord, and I'm encouraged by your seeking, and I thank you for calling in.
Well, I thank you for allowing me to speak, and God bless you for your work, and I hope that anyone listening will do exactly what you said, look within and ask for guidance, and it doesn't matter, if you've done some bad things in your past, you still have time to atone for them on the physical plane. But at the very least, even if you think you're a wonderful person, you're not. There's a lot more you can do with actions, kind actions. Get out there, stir up the world, do some things with love in your heart, and extend that to others, so that as you be the example, they may become an example themselves someday.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about, brother. That's why the Lord came into the flesh, an example to us through his, life and his work and his being, the kindness and the courtesy, the compassion, the foot washing, who is the greatest among you? He that serves the other, and then you serving each other and loving one another, and that's what it's all about. And so God bless you, brother.
Thank you very much again. God bless you.
Thank you. We'll take this one last call, see if they want a question, comment. Area code 770, did you have a question or a comment? Okay, I think it's just a listening.
I think I'm just listening. So.
All right, yeah, they're just listening in. All right, Alan, did you want to comment on what that brother said, and then we'll go on?
I really like what he said about what to do with our time, but I'm not sure exactly where he was coming for on making the world a better place. That sounds a little Rick Warren-ish. God's about division and selection, and he's about the harvest. So I believe and I know that Christ wants us centered on the harvest and centered on salvation, because you can do a lot of great things outside of his name, but if it doesn't account or lead to or facilitate eternal salvation, it's really kind of pointless.
Yeah, it should all be focused on that. And when that's the Holy Grail. For me, there is no other focus. But you do try to help others in everyday life and being. And that goes to not just other individuals, but also the animals that I come across in my everyday life, and even in dealing with the planet and with everything. I want to be kind and courteous and appreciate the sacredness of everything, and that the Lord really blessed everything with its own life and being and its own reason for existence. And so I just try to honor that, and I do try to make what we can do while we're here, make this a better place for our children and for I don't think we have much longer really, but anyways, we're going to go ahead and get back into this because this is pretty interesting information. This next part has to do with the children of Cain. And we know that it talks about how Cain became a city builder and how he built the first city for his firstborn son, Enoch, who is not the Enoch of Seth's line, who the Lord translated before his death. But it talks about the seduction of the children of Adam and Seth and how they became polluted, and then it goes into the story of Noah, which in this book, the Kolbrin Bible, they call him Hannah. So this is from chapter 4 of that particular. It's called the Deluge. It is written in the great book of the Firehawks that earth was destroyed twice, once altogether by fire and once partially by water. The destruction by water was the lesser destruction and came about in this manner. The people of those times spurned all spiritual things, and men lived only for pleasure, caring little for the good of mankind or the future of the people. Lewdness and lies were upon the tongues of all men, and brother could not deal justly with brother. The princes and governors were, and proper tribute was not paid. The statutes were held up to scorn. The lives of men were ruled by their desires, and they spent their days in gluttony, drunkenness, fornication, dancing and singing to instruments of music. The land was unattended, for men dissipated their strength in unproductive lusts. and pleasures. Women lack shame, for many would cast their glances after one man. Men fought among themselves and even slew one another because of their lust for worthless women. While the chaste women were not sought, they were even rejected, for men declined the effort of being worthy of them in the eyes of their fathers. Wives were unhonored, and only the women of pleasure commanded the attentions of men. Women were unclean and immodest, and men lay with them shamelessly in the presence of one another. Old women were more lustful than even the young ones, while virgins were seduced and corrupted in their childhood. Fathers fornicated before their sons and were admired for their prowess. They made no distinction between their sons and other men, or between their wives and other women. Deceit and violence were seen on every hand. To the east and north were high mountains, upon which dwelt a tribe called the sons of Nezarah, the men of the mountains, who were hardy men and mighty hunters, skilled in the chase and valiant in battle. The men were upright, their wives were faithful, and their sons noble. In their hearts were no unworthy thoughts, no envy or hate, no malice or deceitfulness. They did not smile before a man's face, uttering smooth words. Then, when he turned his back, reach out to stab him. In their wives and daughters there was no impure longing, and neither cursing nor lying was heard among them. The womenfolk respected their men and decorum, yet there were men with men's ways, abhorring all forms of unmanliness and degeneracy. Therefore, the treasures in the cities of the plains and the weakness of the people to whom these belonged did not go unnoticed by the sons of Nezarah. So they said among themselves, "Let us go down and do a good deed among these people. Let us show them the ways of men who are strong, making them slaves, and possessing ourselves of their goods." This talk continued among the men in the marketplaces and gatherings until they were stirred up to deeds, and they gathered together a war band of fighting men. The mountain men chose leaders from among themselves after their custom and prepared to fall upon the soft-living people of the plain and to become their masters. When the chiefs of the mountain men saw what was happening, they became wroth and ordered their men to return to their flocks and pastures. The chief of chiefs stood up before the gathered warband and said, "It is our decree that this thing shall not be done. You must not go down from these mountains bringing the sword to these people. Leave them alone, as rotted fruit is left on the tree to wither and die. Leave them to follow their own ways a little longer, and in the fullness of time they will destroy themselves. Make no wizards among your own. If you go down there carrying fire and sword, you may find a trap laid for you among the flesh pots. The attraction of their pleasure and the temptation of their luxuries is too strong. Men such as you, like the lure of flame, have for the moth."
So ties into this big jigsaw puzzle, and we've had books like First Enoch, Maccabees, Esdras taken away for us. So to think that there's not some things that should be searched otherwise, I think that's a little bit naive. And again, it's a glory of God to conceal a matter, but it's the glory of a king, a spiritual king, to seek it out. So all this seems to be fitting into a great jigsaw puzzle, and so it's the prophecies regarding Bob out in the end days, as well as in Luke 21, so that the waves will be roaring, in Jeremiah 50 or 51, that the waters will be brought up over Babylon. So tsunamis will play a part in our future as well. And why I'm interested in this book is, in this concept, is because you look at Exodus, and there's a massive amount of prophetic revelation that people skip over here. You just plug in the two witnesses, the second Exodus prophecies mentioned throughout the prophets, and the parallels between Exodus and the book of Revelation with things like locusts, bloodied water, darkness, boils, frogs being demonic beings in Revelation, hail. All these things are mentioned in the Kolbrin Bible in just a few short, quick chapters. And I can't really find in the chapters that I read about the return of the red dragon / Niburu, its possibilities, that is anti-biblical or anti-day of the Lord. And so the cohesive factor here, what really makes this of a high interest, is that the prophecies Zechariah Sitchin brings forth, which again is from fallen angels, but there's a lot of truth to what he's saying. It's just that spin that's Antichrist, that's the devastator, is that the book of Exodus was approximately 3,600 years ago. So this also...
Alan, you want to comment here?
Amos speaks about, I think it's about in the 8:8 area, of great waters being brought up over Tyre, I believe it is, that they'll never be seen again. Isaiah 24 and many other areas such as Sixth Seal point to such devastation and the earth being brought off its foundations, which again the Kolbrin Bible does speak about, that there is going to be great tsunamis.